Hi, I'm Brianna Burt. I'm from Saskatoon, and I wrote a musical about the famous five. I'm going to sing for you. I'm going to do a one-woman show here, a song that Emily Murphy sings in the musical. It's called Dedication, Determination. And of course, Emily would have had a tremendous amount of dedication and determination to put forward the person's case. And I hope this inspires others to persevere and reach their goals. So here's Dedication, Determination.
You wanna make a change and live your life. You wanna make a name, not just be Mister's wife. You'll need some dedication, determination. You gotta keep your chin up, get some thicker skin. You gotta open doors where you don't fit in. Let's hear it. Dedication, determination. No one's gonna lift you up to tell you you are a star. You better hustle, baby, if you wanna go far. So you work your butt off, you can raise the bar. Come on now, dedication, determination. You wanna get somewhere in your career. You wanna share your voice, make it loud and clear. It's about dedication, determination. You gotta get to school and don't be late. You gotta do your homework and concentrate. Come on now, dedication, determination. Maybe it will be an uphill battle. You might slip and fall. Keep your head up high, 'cause it don't matter at all. Gotta keep believing, stand up nice and tall. Come on now, dedication, determination. You wanna get the vote, you gotta dress the part. You'll need to sew a dress we ain't got at Walmart. Come on now, dedication, determination. Then we can show the men we know what we're worth. Women are just like them, but we can also give birth. Come on now, dedication, determination.
Well, hello. Welcome to another Famous Five Friday. Thank you very much for joining us all today and learning how to be a leader or a better leader, certainly a spokesperson for the women of Canada, for yourself, for your issues. And if you've ever wondered how to get your ideas heard, today's the virtual pink tea for you. And for those of you who haven't attended a virtual pink tea before, this was the way suffragists got together and strategized about how to get the right to vote and the right to run for office. If they just put up notices saying, come to a meeting, the opponents would violently disrupt them. So instead they had teas. So today we're going to learn from some wonderful role models about how to speak up, how to have meaningful change happen, but peacefully. But before we benefit from their wisdom, it's time for a land acknowledgement and a special thanks to our amazing Indigenous sisters who for tens of thousands of years have kept the traditions, have kept the economies, have kept the political systems going. And how exciting that today, so many of them are the chiefs of their tribe, of their nation, and that others are becoming the leaders in the international and national organizations for Indigenous peoples. So let's just take a moment to have a land acknowledgement, to say thank you to the people who have been our leaders, because we are all treaty people. Miigwech. Introducing our fascinating panel today is an outstanding entrepreneur, a political activist, a social justice commentator based here in Calgary. Her name is Sarah Elder Chamarana. Several years ago, well, maybe even 10 years ago, Sarah opened a store called a Madam Premier, which features all kinds of women encouraging items, feminist items, such as books, coffee mugs, t-shirts, different kinds of clothing for children, all giving positive messages, because she really wants the participation of women and girls to increase significantly. Of particular interest to Sarah is the participation of women in political decision making. And of course, you can visit Sarah and Madam Premier here in Calgary and Inglewood, or simply Google her and shop online. And she has tremendous inventory available at this time. So Sarah, thank you very much for creating a Madam Premier and for introducing our dynamic panel today that is going to encourage more of us to organize our thoughts, to value ourselves, and to speak up. So Sarah, over to you. Over to you.
Thank you, Frances. What a pleasure it is to introduce such amazing people. Our speaker today, Shari Graydon, established Informed Opinions to amplify the voices of women that may not be heard from, despite being experts and leaders in their respective fields, including myself. As a result of this invaluable work, Shari has enabled Canadians to benefit from equitable, inclusive, and democratic commentary. The time for anyone to say that they weren't able to find a qualified female speaker on any topic is over. There are no excuses anymore. Shari trains us to speak up and to do so effectively, whether it's to corporate and governmental leaders or the media. Her charity, Informed Opinions, conducts research and shares the results which help to expand democracy in Canada. Being dedicated to gender equality, Shari is also a champion for another national organization called Equal Voice that encourages women's involvement in politics, a cause I am also committed to at Madam Premier. In my interactions with Shari, her commitment to advocating for women through her work is always clear and at the forefront of conversation. At a time when we need more informed commentary more than ever, it's my pleasure to introduce Shari and Informed Opinions to you. And leading the discussion today is another woman who takes action and finds opportunity. Sharon Hapton transformed her 50th birthday party into a national charity to feed vulnerable Canadians. Her organization, Soup Sisters and Broth Brothers, started with volunteers, donating time and money to make soup to help others. Despite the challenges presented when COVID started, Sharon triumphed by changing her strategy. Today, frozen soup arrives at agencies across Canada. It's examples like this of the resiliency of incredible women like Sharon that inspires so many. And now I'm eager to turn this virtual pink tea over to you, Sharon and Shari, so that we can all enjoy your conversation.
What an honor to be here to interview my good friend and neighbor, Shari Graydon. Shari is thoughtful and thought-provoking, passionate and persevering, funny and fun. I hope you are as eager as I am to learn from Shari's wisdom as a great person and leader. Never underestimate the power of a woman on a mission. Let's get started. Shari, please tell us why you feel so passionately about and have worked so diligently for women's voices being heard.
I feel, and I suspect many on this call would too, a profound sense of injustice every time I reflect on how limited the lives of my grandmothers and centuries of women before them have been as a result of the presumption for forever that women were not capable, were not as capable as men to take on the many challenges that we so demonstrably can and do achieve all the time. And so in my lifetime, knowing that my mother had three choices when she graduated high school, there were three jobs she could take, knowing that in even the last 60 years, a woman who got pregnant while working could be fired for the crime of procreating. Those changes, obviously, we've overcome those, but it's still really clear there's so much data in so many arenas that legacy of assumption that men were superior in all sorts of ways continues to haunt us and prevent women from really living up to their potential and contributing in the world in all of the ways that we can. Last week, the last thing I want to add is my friend Catherine in Toronto last week said to me that her 13-year-old daughter and their friends think it's preposterous that they're not equal. And I think that's an evolution. It's great that 13-year-olds think that, and we need to create the circumstances in the world to live up to their expectation that they are in fact treated equally in every way.
Shari, how do you determine that women's voices are not being heard?
Well, I've been part of research projects since the 1990s when I was president of Media Watch, which is Informed Opinion's predecessor. And we had done an annual newspaper study looking at 15 daily papers across the country. This was obviously long before the internet. And so we would study and document the representation of women versus men being quoted. And at the time, over 4 years, women's voices were between 19% and 22%. And that was in Canadian media and print media, but television and radio were very similar. And then in 2009, off the side of my breakfast table, because I read the Globe and Mail every day, I did a cursory content analysis myself, just of the opinion page, because the comment or opinion page has outsized influence. It's read by policymakers and politicians. And so the people whose voices get to be on that page have a disproportionate influence. And in 2009, we had barely moved. We were still at about 24%. And that's why I started Informed Opinions. We have done additional research in 2015. We did additional research in broadcast and print media and online. And then I convened roundtables of journalists across the country. And I said, okay, here's the data. You guys suck at reflecting the diversity of perspectives. Women are only being quoted 25 or 26% of the time. And we're going to help you change that. So we built a database, as Sarah mentioned, that features and makes it easy for journalists to find women with informed opinions who will say yes when asked.
So I think you answered a lot of my next question, but what statistics or studies support the analysis of this, of the lack of women's voices?
So on Informed Opinion's website, under the research button, you can see all of the studies that I've just mentioned. And you can also Google Gender Gap Tracker, which is our online digital analytics tool that measures in real time the ratio of women versus men being quoted in Canada's most influential media. We also just last week launched a francophone version of that. So Radar de Parité measures the presence of women's voices in Quebec media. And that's available, as I say, on our website. And one of the big consequences or the insights that we gained from looking at the data from the Gender Gap Tracker is when we did a deeper dive, we noticed that 60% of the most quoted men and women were actually elected officials. They were politicians. And when I realized that, I thought, okay, all of the work that Informed Opinions is doing, training women to write op-eds, to say yes to media interviews, making them available for journalists to find, we're not going to achieve our goal until Equal Voice, which has been focused on women in politics for 2 decades, until Equal Voice achieves its goal, we're not going to achieve ours. So I went to Equal Voice and said, what are you doing and how can we help you? And so since then, we've been collaborating and we've been focusing our attention on the data related to the absence of women's voices in politics. And so here's another resource for you. People can go to, I'll just put this in the chat. They can go to balancethepower.ca. And what we've done there is we've created a map. And on the map, we've outlined what percentage of voice women have in electoral politics, both provincially and federally. And if you go to the link that I've just sent you and you click on the problem and you scroll down and you see the map of Canada, it makes crystal clear with data how underrepresented we are. In Saskatchewan and Newfoundland, for example, women have only 20% of the seats in those legislatures. That's 1 in 5 officials are women. That's indefensible in 2023. Other provinces are doing much better. Quebec is 45% women. BC is 44% women. In Alberta, where I live now, we're at 38% women, but it all depends in part on the political stripe of the party elected. And 6 other nations around the world are doing better on this metric than we are. So in Canada, we think we're a progressive country. Women's equality is a big deal here. We pay attention to it, and indeed we do. But we are 61st in the world for women in politics, not because of what we've done, but because of what we haven't done and what many other countries are doing to ensure that women are heard in legislatures and parliaments across the country.
And another big question. So what is the difference that having women's voices heard have made? Big question.
So I'm going to start with a story that every woman I know can relate to. In 2005, my husband and I were in Montreal, and we were cutting across the parking lot of a Catholic church, and a TV crew doing streeters approached us and said, "The Pope has just died. Would you comment?" And I said, "No, I don't think so," and kept walking. And from behind me, David, who hadn't been to church in 40 years, he said, "Sure, I'll comment." And I turned around stunned, wondering what pearls of wisdom were going to drop from his beautiful mouth. And I watched him bow his head and gravely declare, "It's a very sad day for Catholics everywhere." And afterwards, as we continued on our walk to the Old Port, I said, "Honey, that was a little obvious. And wouldn't it be great if the next Pope came up with a progressive policy on birth control that wouldn't trap millions of poor Catholic women around the world in an endless cycle of childbearing and child rearing?" And David, good feminist that he is, said, "Yeah, Shari, that would have been great. Too bad you turned down the interview." Too bad doesn't begin to describe it. His comments made the national news. And I had, as I've already told you, literally done the research documenting the underrepresentation of women's voices. And I had given hundreds of interviews as the spokesperson of 2 national women's organizations. I produced TV series. I was better equipped than most people to look into a camera and say, "This is what I think." And the reason I tell the story in response to the question is, what difference would it make if women were quoted, is that when you think about it, most women spend decades of our lives either trying to avoid becoming pregnant, trying to become pregnant, or dealing with the consequences of having been pregnant, which last forever and change everything. Our bodies, our brains, our ability to multitask, the way we're treated and sometimes paid, all sorts of things. And so if half of the population's insights are not present every day in the decisions we're making about every aspect, we're missing insights that have significant policy implications. We're not funding the kind of programs that are necessary in order to truly reflect the realities of the population. And on top of that, we know from decades of other research in business and think tanks that when you have a diversity of perspectives around decision-making tables, not just women and men, but diversity more broadly, when communities, equity-deserving communities, are reflected in the diversity that they represent in the population, decisions get better. We have happier workplaces, more profitable companies, peace treaties last longer. There are all sorts of benefits that flow from diversity, and we're not taking advantage of those.
Shari, more women than ever are participating on boards of directors and elected to various governments. Why should we have a special initiative encouraging more women to step forward?
Really, I think because of all the reasons I've just mentioned, we get better outcomes when we're drawing on the insights of a more diverse population. And let me cite one concrete example that I was really struck by back in 2008, when the global financial collapse happened. Christine Lagarde, who was then the finance minister in France, she was asked what could have been done to avoid the ton of damage from which only the wealthiest escaped. And she said, "I must confess, if only Lehman Brothers, they were one of the financial institutions, if only Lehman Brothers had had a few sisters, we wouldn't be in this mess. Now, in the context of the interview she gave, that was, a witty clip, a quip, but in fact, research backs that up. So what we know is that if you have women and men together making decisions about the financial markets, because of the way women are socialized compared to men, women tend to take smaller risks. So men are more inclined to take risks for financial gain. Women are more inclined to consider consequences and long-term pain because life trains us for that. And so research again shows that we will have more stable financial markets if we are equitably represented. So that's just one concrete example. But, as citizens, we want our governments to make the best decisions possible. And what we know from history is that incremental change is not working for us. So the fact that Canada is 61st is because 6 other countries have actively put in these kind of deliberate measures. And change, in order for change to happen, it requires people to actually be active. It doesn't happen on its own. And, historically, we know that women marched in the streets to be able to vote. We advocated and marched and lobbied in order to get sexual assault laws, in order to get maternity leave. All of the progressive changes that have happened in this country and around the world happen because people insist that they happen.
So what steps can individuals take to make sure that their voice is heard?
We have a ton of free resources on our website, informedopinions.org. So, going back to the work that we do, amplifying women's voices outside of the political sphere, we deliver training. We do workshops often in concert with nonprofit organizations, with universities. We do open training that anybody can sign up for a professional development fee. And in those sessions, we provide women with insights into how to go into a media interview and come out not feeling like you've been brutalized, how to go in having identified key messages and thought about, okay, this is what I think people should understand. These are tips and strategies to prepare. We train women how to translate what they know into short form, publishable commentary that can appear on the comment or op-ed page, because those pages are really influential. And in addition to the workshops, as I say, we have lots of free resources that are on the website. Anybody can go to our Learning Hub and read blog posts or watch videos that share some of the many tips and strategies that we cover in the workshops that we deliver. In an ideal world, we wouldn't need all of these resources. We wouldn't need to train women, because it's not that women need fixing. It's just that the default for so long has been that if you're looking for an expert as a journalist, you default to the guys you've been interviewing for 5 or 10 or 15 years. And if they remain the heads of organizations, which is certainly true in the corporate space in particular, you default to those usual suspects. But what we know is that when journalists reach out to women and they say yes, the diversity of perspectives that we hear as a result of journalists consulting not just women, but members of equity deserving communities, racialized people, queer people, Indigenous people, people living with disabilities, we get real insight that is so much richer and more relevant to developing policy and programs that will address the needs of the entire population.
Okay, so what steps should government take so that more women are decision makers?
Well, there are a number of things. We have on the Balance the Power website a page that talks about the paths to parity that other countries have taken. I'm going to talk about a few things here. In the corporate sector, the government has had a comply and explain policy for a number of years about women on boards. And so publicly traded companies are supposed to report every year how many women they've appointed to their boards or in their C-suites. And that transparency and accountability is helpful. In other countries, not only in the political realm, but in the business realm, many other countries have implemented quotas and said, don't just comply or explain, but actually we're going to require you to point a minimum number or 50% women in your C-suites or on your boards. And, sometimes people immediately react to that and say, well, no, quotas are a bad thing because then you're going to get unqualified people. And that was definitely the perception in some of the Northern European countries where this was tried. But then when researchers went back in afterwards, what they determined was that the quality of board members and even the quality of elected officials went up after governments or political parties were required to run, in this case, as many women as men. In Sweden, for example, they implemented that quota system at the municipal level. And when researchers went back in afterwards, what they determined was that the quality of elected representatives had indeed improved. And they attributed it to the fact that when you impose quotas, it's not that the really great male candidates drop off, it's that the candidates who maybe don't have as much experience are not as well equipped to be in government. They drop off because parties are incentivized to recruit really strong women candidates. And so, the outcome is good for everyone.
And so then what are the benefits of being a spokesperson?
Well, I started writing op-eds as the president of Media Watch, which, as I mentioned, was Informed Opinion's predecessor. And I started doing that in 1990, even though I was a barely successful graduate student. I had applied to a very competitive master's program at Simon Fraser University. I didn't get in, so I walked over to the education faculty, which had many more spots, and they let me in. And at the same time, I had joined the board of Media Watch, national nonprofit women's organization that was working to improve the portrayal and representation of women in the media. And because I started to learn about the impact of the portrayal practices of advertisers and TV broadcasters on how women perceived themselves, on how women and girls were perceived by others, I started writing commentary to draw attention to the things that I was learning. And what I discovered very quickly was the more profile I had, the more amplified my voice was on the op-ed pages. Eventually, the Vancouver Sun gave me a regular column. I would then get additional radio and television interview requests, and those would lead to additional requests to come and speak to groups and organizations and speak at conferences to health professionals and educators. And the more I had profile, the greater my opportunity to influence, to share knowledge that I knew that maybe wasn't commonly understood by others. And what I learned was women having amplified voices is absolutely critical to ensuring that things that affect us differently, that we know and care about, get as much attention as the things that are currently getting attention. I read the Globe and Mail every day, and every day there are 4 to 6 pages devoted entirely to sports. I'm not much of a sports fan, so I don't really care. But one of the reasons that I notice those pages is that women are almost entirely absent from those pages. And one of the reasons our gender gap tracker that I mentioned earlier, that measures the ratio of women versus men being quoted now, I think one of the reasons that we're still only at 30% is because so much media attention continues to be paid to things that privilege or prioritize or emphasize men's endeavors or interests. And not that women aren't interested in sports, but it would be nice if women's sports were covered as often as that. So going back to your question, why is it important and what are the benefits of being a spokesperson? It absolutely has the capacity to increase your influence. And what we've seen from informed opinions in terms of the women who are in our database, whose voices we are amplifying, who are saying yes to media interviews, they too, we hear from them all the time. They get appointed to prestigious panels or boards of directors, or they're given speaking opportunities. Some of them increase their capacity to get research funding because they share their insights on temporary foreign workers, for example, or food insecurity. And by virtue of doing that in a public forum, they get attention from policymakers, from decision makers who realize, oh, that's a problem. We can fix this. Let's talk to you about how we can work together.
Okay, this is the perfect time to introduce a couple of wonderful young ladies who have questions for you, Shari. I'm going to start with Naya. She is a middle school student at Douglasdale School who loves art, math, and science. She volunteered at the Famous Five Pink Tea on October 15th and is now a Junior 5 future leader. Naya, what is your question?
Hi, my name is Naya. I'm in grade 5 and I go to Douglasdale School, and I have a question for you. How do I know if my opinion is informed enough to share with others?
Such a great question.
Oh, it's such a beautiful question. And that she has that informed a perspective at her age to be asking that question. That's a question everybody who ever opines on social media should be asking themselves. And if only there were a way to implement a filter so that if you aren't reflecting, is my opinion informed enough to weigh in, that you don't get to comment. And so here's what I would say to Naya and every other woman and girl, man and boy who is trans person, anybody who's wondering about this question. This is what we tell women in the workshops that we deliver, is that the question to ask yourself is not, am I the best person? And that's a default that lots of women historically in our experience have had. They get approached, invited to speak at a conference or to a journalist, and they think, well, I'm not the best person. You know, I can think of 3 other people who are really expert. You should talk to them. Men typically don't go to that default. They think, well, you've asked me, sure, I'll comment. And so one piece of advice is to behave like a reasonable man, a reasonable white man who's empowered to share his informed opinion. Another thing is to remember that there is no such thing as one best person, because we all come with our own differently inflected life experience and the perspectives that those inform. And so you and I, Sharon, might have very different perspectives on the same issue, and they both might add value and be equally valid. And then the third thing that we explicitly advise people to do is that if you're wondering, you know, if somebody approaches you and says, would you like to speak? Or if you see something and you think, well, I don't agree with that, or I'd like to weigh in, you're really looking for what knowledge is already out there, or what is it that the journalist is looking for, or the conference programmer. So that's one circle of your Venn diagram. And then you draw another circle and you think, what do I know? What is my informed opinion? What is it informed by? Is it my life experience? I'm the mother of an autistic child. Maybe I don't have a PhD in a related subject, but I have 20 years of experience. And so I have an experience-informed opinion. And what is the intersection between the issue and your knowledge? What's the sweet spot? And the question to ask is, can you add value? And my sense is, from 25 years of this work, is that women and equity deserving communities who we don't hear from, they can add value precisely because their voices have typically not been reflected.
Right. Okay, another question, and this one is from Sosha. She is a second-year psychology and philosophy student at Queen's University, and she would like to make the world a more accessible place for women. She is the president of Queen's Ladies in Fitness Training, which strives to make fitness inclusive for women on campus. Sosha's goal is to help women achieve their goals, whatever they may be. And your question, please, Sosha.
Thank you for the work that you've contributed to Equal Voice. Are you optimistic about increased women's participation in politics?
You can't be a social justice advocate for 30 years and not be optimistic. Even though you get smacked down and you have really naive assumptions about, oh, I'll just train women to write op-eds and I'll fix this problem, which was where I started 14 years ago. So yes, I am optimistic. Somebody famous once said the arc of justice, or the arc of progress, bends towards justice. I still believe that. And my sense is that, you know, of course, we are making progress. I've been having conversations with women across the country over the last year, specifically about women in politics. I've been collaborating with Equal Voice and others. And what I know is that women are deeply engaged in their communities. They are deeply committed to making a difference for their families, for their communities, for their provinces in this country. And many of them want to run for office. You know, one of the things that often comes up when I have these conversations is women of a certain age, my age and older, will say, well, nobody wants to run for politics because, you know, there's lots of online trolling and you're in the public eye and the lifestyle is really challenging. But the truth is, and Equal Voice has done this research, many, many young women want to run for office. They see that as an opportunity to wield agency, to make a difference and make a contribution. And because there are women across the country and gender diverse people across the country who want to make change and want to engage in public service, and because of the Balance the Power project that we're working on at Informed Opinions, and the work that Equal Voice is doing, and the leadership that Sarah is wielding with her Madam Premier, I think that there is a momentum. And what our goal at Informed Opinions in launching our Balance the Power initiative is to help bring all of that momentum together and help mobilize people to understand that, yes, this is a movement. I'm not alone in my office, you know, scrolling on social media and realizing, oh, it's bad out there. There are hundreds and thousands and probably millions of Canadians who would like to see change. In fact, we did some polling a year ago, last September, asking Canadians how they felt about the fact that Canada was 61st in the world. And I was very gratified to see that a majority were shocked, appalled, disappointed, saddened, angered by that. They want to see change. And Canadians, a majority of Canadians, understand that politicians and political parties have the power to do what many other countries have done and to make that kind of change. So yeah, short answer, I'm absolutely optimistic.
Thanks, Sosha. Good luck with your studies. And yeah, optimism is universally mandatory right now. So number one, that's very important. So Shari, how can the rest of us support female spokespeople and or leaders?
So many ways. You know, when we launched the Gender Gap Tracker and Rayon de Parité, we created on those websites an email mechanism so that if you look at how well CBC is doing, or the Globe, or the National Post, or Global, or CTV, and think they could do better, you can just click on their logo and email them and say, you know, I consume news, I watch your TV station, or I read your paper, and we know from research that coverage gets better and more effective, so you need to quote more women so people can be active on the media side. If you are somebody who has an informed opinion, if you have expertise in a particular area and you're able in your current job to speak to the news media in interviews, you could join our database, informedopinions.org, right on the homepage. If you scroll down a little bit on the right-hand side, it says, are you an expert? And would you like to be part of the database? So we're adding women to that all the time. We have 2,500 women in the database currently, and we have 1,800 journalists who subscribe for updates and are calling on women. That's another way. In terms of supporting women and leaders and spokespeople in politics, you can donate to the campaign of a woman in a riding that you're in, provincially, federally, or municipally, during the next election. You can also visit the Balance the Power website and sign up to become part of the movement. So again, right on the homepage of Balance the Power, you can sign up to receive updates about what we're doing. And very specifically, we're really developing a campaign right now where we're urging all Canadians who care about this to email their MP and their MLA or their MPP or their MNA in Quebec and say, will you, given how important this is, given all of the data and the research we have, will you sign a pledge, a public pledge that says, yes, I recognize how important this is, and I will work in my capacity as an elected official, I will work to increase the representation, not just of women, but of equity deserving groups, so that our democracy is genuinely representative. You know, democracy by definition is based on representation, and we don't have that right now. We think of ourselves as a democracy. We are a democracy, but we are not representative, and insisting to politicians that they do something about that is something that every Canadian can do, and not waiting for the next election, but you can do that right now.
Okay. So how do I know that I'm the right person to speak up, to be the leader?
Well, I think that speaking up, starting by, going from zero to leader is not a good idea for anybody. I mean, to Naya's question, it's always useful to think, okay, what are my strengths? What is it that I know? What is the contribution I can make? I think getting life experience and having exposure to different kinds of jobs or locations is valuable in the context of public service or leadership more broadly. So, amassing life experience, becoming really good at some things, and then noticing what contributions you're best equipped to make, and thinking about, okay, given the strengths that I have and my comfort level in certain situations, how can I leverage that to make the biggest contribution to others? And for some people, that might be politics. For some people, it might be leadership in their community or leadership in their organization. There are so many ways for us to serve others and to make a contribution. And I think self-awareness and being able to honestly interrogate yourself and understand your strengths and accept feedback from others and learn and always be open to continuing to learn is one of the things that equips you to speak up in the circumstances where you really can add value and where you can demonstrate leadership.
So, what does success look like? I think that's a very big question, and I'm not sure there's a finite answer, or that there should be, but what does success look like for you, Shari?
Well, for me, success would look like being able, the gender gap tracker and Radar de Parité, demonstrating that, women are now being quoted close to 50% or just above 50%. My friend Catherine, who I mentioned earlier, talking about her 13-year-old daughter, she joked with me last week. She said, I think informed opinions should commit to always ensuring that men have 50% of the voice. We'll just make sure men have 50% of the voice. And I think aspiring to a scenario where who gets voice and who gets attention and who gets influence reflects the genuine diversity of the population, that's what success would look like. I was born in Montreal, and then I lived in Vancouver for 30 years. And then about 25 years ago, I moved to Ottawa. And in my first year in Ottawa, my husband and I went to Parliament Hill on Canada Day. And I was so moved to see the genuine rainbow of skin colors and diversity of races and ethnicities and gender diversity of all kinds, seeing people on Parliament Hill on Canada Day with waving flags and showing up because of their pride in this country we share and the opportunities that it affords people of all races and ethnicities and genders in theory, but not always in practice. I remember being moved by that, and yet knowing that that crowd on Parliament Hill does not look like the crowd inside the Parliament building right adjacent to it. And so for me, success will be when the crowd on the Hill looks like the 300 and however many 85 representatives who are sitting in the chamber making decisions that affect the lives of those people who show up on Canada Day to celebrate who we are and who we could be and who we should be.
I love that. I love that analogy. We have a few minutes left, Shari. What else? What else for you?
Well, I guess success will also be when women are quoted and promoted and paid and portrayed with the same degree of respect, when we are protected from violence. A few weeks ago, the Parliamentary Health Committee, so some of the people on the call may have noticed this, a journalist tweeted a photograph of the Parliamentary Health Committee. So this is a standing committee of Parliament. It's made up of MPs who are nominated by their parties. And the reason it was news, because the Parliamentary Subcommittee on Health sits regularly whenever Parliament's in session. They have meetings. And so this parliamentary committee had been around for, a few years. But the photograph that the journalist tweeted showed that the membership of the Parliamentary Committee on Health was 11 men and 1 woman. So that in itself is deeply troubling and really not helpful. Women use the healthcare system much more than men because our bodies are complicated and we give birth to everybody. But on top of that, the reason it was news was because the Health Committee had been inviting submissions and inviting witnesses to come and talk to the committee about women's health in particular. So the dissonance between these 11 maybe very intelligent, thoughtful public servants, elected officials who were men, 11 men, 1 woman, entertaining and then issuing a report and asking questions about women's health, people went understandably bananas and said, how does this make sense? And because they went bananas, because they protested, the political parties all came together and said, oh, no, we'll fix this. We'll swap out women for some of the men on the committee. So they responded. That's good news. I don't know why they didn't do that before they announced that they were going to entertain topic on women's health, but they did respond. And what that tells you, what that tells all of us, is that protest matters. We need to be present and persistent and loud in demanding and insisting on greater equity, not just for women, but for Indigenous people and Black people and queer people. We need to be asking for those changes because it's only when we ask for the changes that they happen. The other thing that I would say is, it's really personal. And I suspect you, Sharon, and everybody else who's party to this conversation today has their own sense of attachment to the changes we would collectively and individually like to see in the world. So I have 3 grandchildren, two grandsons and a granddaughter. And my granddaughter, Charlotte, she turned 9 just last week. And I think about Charlotte growing up in the world today. And I want her, Charlotte, and your Charlottes and Alicia's and Emily's and Miriam's and Fatima's to grow up in a world where there isn't any question about their ability to do the jobs that women are already doing and others that women are not still allowed to do or promoted to do as often as men. I want Charlotte to have the same opportunities to be as respected as her brothers, to grow up in a world that celebrates her brains as well as her beauty or her body, and that protects her from violence or sexual harassment, whether she works in mining or the military, high tech, or finance. And we're not there yet. You know, the increasing rates that we've seen over the last couple of years since the pandemic of gender-based violence and intimate partner violence, that problem is growing. It's not getting better, it's growing. Somebody the other day suggested to me that was probably a function of the pandemic and how much time people spent online and possibly the consumption of pornography or people being behind closed doors and not socialized. And so I don't know what the reason is, but those problems are getting worse, not better. And we really need to solve them, and we need to solve them collectively. And women need to be at the tables where those conversations are happening to surface the kinds of solutions or experiences that will help us collectively figure out a way forward.
Thank you so much. Here's Frances. We're back with Frances.
I hate to interrupt. This has been such an incredibly meaningful and inspiring conversation, a very necessary conversation. I'm so glad that this virtual pink tea is being recorded and we can send it out to everybody who registered. And I think there are about 180 people who are registered, so they will get it, but it will be posted to our website so that anybody can avail themselves of this. I'm very moved by today's talk and just so full of gratitude for the work that the organizations that Shari's been involved with are doing. And so it's now time to raise a glass, a mug, teacup, a toast to our fabulous panelists. And I would like, of course, to start with Shari, to say that it is very clear she's a Famous Five protege. I have no doubt the Famous Five are jumping up and down for joy and encouraging you and saying to the rest of us, look what can be done. Listen to Shari, get out and do something. Everybody makes a difference. And your illustrations about Canada Day, mirroring Canada, but what's happening inside is not. And the health panel, bingo. And look at the difference that it made. So Shari, please keep working on the various groups that you have started. The Path to Parity is fabulous, Balance the Power, Informed Opinions, and hopefully many of us will join in and say thanks. And so with a glass or a mug or whatever, could we please raise our toast to Shari, a magnificent leader. Thank you, Shari.
Thank you very much.
And I love the two pink tea cups, mugs there that I see with Shari and Sharon. And to Sharon, that was skillfully done. Skillfully done. Your questions were so thoughtful, and you knew how to make it flow so that the information that came to us was new, and then it was reinforced. And you brought out Shari's passion and her intelligence, her excellence in conveying information. It was easy. Was it easy?
Bringing up Sherry's passion.
Yeah. And of course, we want to say thanks to you, Sharon, for the Soup Sisters and Broth Brothers. 4 million bowls of soup. Absolutely fantastic. Fantastic. And this is screen a picture of Shari Graydon's book, which I love, and I've read others, and also Sharon, Soup Sisters has a number of so I would encourage you to get them if you haven't got them already, and stay tuned for others in your life, because they add much to the quality of their life, and also their ability to participate. And also with us today, other leaders that were very inspiring. So we want to them as well. So let's raise a toast to Sarah for so if we could change our graph. And to Naya and to Sosha. Our thanks to Sarah, Naya, and Sosha for being leaders. Thank you. You know, this makes me want, I've been going to a number of events lately, and we've been singing for He's a Jolly Good Person. And first of all, I'm very glad that the song has the word person in it. But I'm thinking we should change it to She's a Jolly Good Person. And I wish I had a singing voice and I could sing to Sharon and Shari and to Sosha and Naya and Sarah, for you are jolly good persons, for you're a jolly good person. And so say all of us. But if I may, I'll ask Sharon and Shari now to mute their microphones and their cameras so that they can relax a little bit. They've been working very, very hard and have been so incredibly inspiring. And now just a little bit of Famous Five Foundation news. Well, this is our last virtual pink tea for 2023. We've had an incredible group of leaders come and help us be better persons. And of course, it started with Sharon being interviewed by Shari in February. These are all posted on our website, so please do go back and enjoy them. I'm happy to announce that we're going to continue with the virtual pink teas, and that the season's pass is now available for 2024 series. There will be 5 of them. Unfortunately, I apologize. We haven't yet done dates or the will be involved. The season tickets are now available, and I hope you will all sign up before the end of the and certainly at the beginning of 2024. We'll be in touch again. So this does continue. Also continuing is the tour of the miniature of the Women Are Persons Monument. The famous maquette has really been having a terrific time in the library of Mount St. Vincent University, a largely female university in Halifax. So they will be there until the middle to the end of January, and we hope you will go and visit them. We are planning or hoping that we can go to Concordia University in Montreal and then attend a couple of other universities as we get ready for October 18th, 2024. That will be the 95th anniversary of the Persons case. That's the legal decision that decided that the word persons would always mean women and men, would always mean men and women. This was the first significant international legal declaration of the principle of equality. And that's Canadian, but it had ripples throughout the world. So next October 18th, we're going to have hopefully national celebrations with pink teas happening all across Canada. So start thinking about how you and who you want to spend Persons Day on October 18th, 2024 with. And if you're in the Calgary area, please join us here. We are happy to announce that the Governor General will be coming to Calgary to present the Governor General's awards in commemoration of the Persons case. This happens once a year when 5 women and a young woman are recognized and appreciated for the leadership they have given while improving the lives of other girls and women in Canada. We are also thrilled to announce that the Minister of Arts, Culture, and Status of Women in Alberta, the Honorable Tanya Furr, has agreed that she will play a major role in helping to fund our celebrations and to get the word out that women are persons, that this is the 95th anniversary. Oh, and I should have said, of course, it's probably time for you to nominate somebody to win a Governor General's award in commemoration of the Persons case. So please do, you just go to the site for the Governor General and you will see where the form is. And it's a pretty easy form to fill out. And the women who win are truly outstanding. And this year was no different. 5 amazing women, but one of them is very special to us. And I'm hoping she is still watching our virtual pink tea today because she registered for it. And that is Marlene Catterall. Marlene is very special to us because she's one of the major reasons why the famous 5 live outside the front door of the Senate of Canada. Her governance expertise and her courage to speak out, to speak up when a ruling was made that she knew was incorrect. And as a result, the resolution came back for discussion and it passed. The private members bill passed so that the famous 5 could live outside the door of the Senate in Canada and, of course, here in Calgary. So Marlene, brava. And thank you very much. And congratulations on your award today. Well, our thanks to all of you for joining us today and to those of you who have joined over the season. We greatly appreciate your support. Our thanks also to the sponsors, particularly to Enbridge, who has been an incredible supporter of the Famous 5, and we look forward to working with you next year for the virtual Pink Tea series, but also for the 95th anniversary. And so now our last toast, and I would ask Sharon and Shari to please join us again so that you can see once more some 2 of Canada's outstanding leaders. And what we want to do is take the Famous 5 pledge to assume leadership and to say in a strong, clear voice, to me, I'm a leader too, because we all are in different ways, but realize the power in you and the value of you formally becoming a leader in your mind too. So I will count down from 5. And in a strong, clear voice, please say, to me, I'm a leader too. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. To me, I'm a leader too. Well, thank you, Shari and Sharon, for this outstanding presentation. Again, I'm thrilled it's been recorded and we can watch it again and again and grow from it. Here's to a very peaceful end to 2023 and a very exciting, dynamic, progressive 2024, but generally peacefully accomplished. That doesn't mean that you can't speak strongly in favor of a particular view, but it does mean we do it peacefully and respectfully. And so now it's over to Brianna Burt, who wrote a musical about the Famous 5. And she's going to sing one song from it called Dedication, Determination. So, merci, thank you, happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas. We'll see you all in 2024, you wonderful leaders. Bye-bye.
You wanna make a change and live your life. You wanna make a name, not just be Mr.'s wife. You'll need some dedication, determination. You gotta keep your chin up, get some thicker skin. You gotta open doors where you don't fit in. Let's hear it. Dedication, determination. No one's gonna gonna lift you up to tell you you are a star. You better hustle, baby, if you wanna go far. So you work your butt off, you can raise the bar. Come on now, dedication, determination. You wanna get somewhere in your career. You wanna share your voice, make it loud and clear. It's about dedication, determination. You gotta get to school and don't be late. You gotta do your homework and concentrate. Come on now, dedication, determination. Maybe it will be an uphill battle. You might slip and fall. Keep your head up high, 'cause it don't matter at all. Gotta keep believing, stand up nice and tall. Come on now, dedication, determination. You wanna get the vote, you gotta dress the part. You'll need to sew a dress we ain't got at Walmart. Come on now, dedication, determination. Then we can show the men we know what we're worth. Women are just like them, but we can also give birth. Come on now, dedication, determination. You don't need to be a girly girl, and you don't need to flirt. They don't make it easy for us girls in a skirt. You can say it loud or be an introvert. Come on now, dedication, determination. Dedication, determination.